Call a meeting to order. The council meeting, Monday, January 28th. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Move approval.
Move approval of what?
January 21st.
Oh, the minutes. Okay.
Oh, you haven't started yet.
We're not. Madam Clerk.
First, that's good.
Yes, try and catch up to Councillor Sikora, would you please?
Sorry about that. First item are the minutes of the regular council meeting held Monday, January 21st.
Moved by Councillor Sikora and seconded by Councillor Hodge to approve. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 2, City of Coquitlam Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4363, 2012, which is the text amendment to remove the prohibition on in-ground swimming pools in several single-family zones in northeast Coquitlam. The recommendation is that Council give second, third, and fourth and final readings to Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4363, 2012.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, second by Councillor Reamer. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 3, City of Coquitlam Heritage Revitalization Bylaw number 4369, 2012, and City of Coquitlam Heritage Designation Bylaw number 4371, 2012 for 218 Begin Street. Recommendation is 1, that Council give second, third, and fourth and final readings to Coquitlam Heritage Revitalization Bylaw number 4369, 2012, and 2, that Council give second, third, and fourth and final readings to Coquitlam Heritage Designation Bylaw number 4371, 2012.
Moved by Councillor Reamer, seconded by Councillor Hodge. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 4, City of Coquitlam Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4353, 2012 for the property at 721 Gauthier Avenue. The staff recommendation is that Council give second, third, and fourth and final readings to Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4353, 2012.
Moved by Councillor O'Neill, seconded by Councillor Hodge. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. The public hearing information was very, very useful, and I know that this is just a rezoning, but I also understand that part of what's going on is the development permit applications being made, and would like the opportunity to sort of speak to the massing of this very large, overbearing couple of buildings that just feel huge. And so I have some concerns about the massing of it. I mean, I like that we're getting 4 units, but certainly we've seen examples in parts of, I've seen them in New West, parts in North Van, where they have massed them in such a way that it didn't look like it was one huge mansion. And would really appreciate if we had an opportunity to break it up a bit, and it's just... It feels like it feels dated, like in another era, and that's not sort of the direction we're moving here. Is that something we could do?
Your Worship, yes. Certainly we can take the direction from Council, and as part of a review of the development permit and the form and character of the building, we'd have discussions with the architect around a massing, essentially an improved massing which tries to break the building up into less of a uniform mass and more kind of multiple building mass arrangement.
Okay. That'd be great. Thank you.
Councillor O'Neill.
Yes, I'm going to speak in favor. I am speaking in favor of this. And I want to link this proposal to a discussion we had this afternoon, that of housing affordability. And I see this as a beautiful example of one of our most successful policies, or hopefully to be a successful policy, in action. And this is the increasing the densification, making better use of the existing land that we have. I think this can only help housing affordability in Coquitlam. And on that specific issue, we've done a lot of talking about the parking. I would actually not want to see the developer being asked to provide more parking stalls on the land in question. It would take away from the land that I believe that could be used for recreational purposes by the 4 families or 4 individuals that will be living there, and B, it would add to the expense of building that project, I would think. I believe that there's adequate parking around the house, definitely on the south side of it currently. The mayor suggested earlier that perhaps the development could end up including some of that unused street. That would presume that the developer would be asked to buy that. That would add to expense as well. I would like to keep this project as affordable as possible. I don't imagine that it will be the most expensive sort of construction given its neighborhood. Anyway, I'm not going to get into projecting that, but I think it's an affordable area, is what I'm trying to say. It's an area that people looking for affordable space here in Coquitlam can look here. So I'm glad to be able to support this bylaw that would facilitate the development of this project. Thank you.
Thank you. I've always taken the position, and I've always taken the position that if we don't own something and if we wouldn't buy it today, then we really ought not to own it. And that's sort of, it's the question of historical cost. We've traditionally owned something and we keep it because we've always owned it. In this case, we've always had a road there, but the road used to be connected to Gauthier on the other side of Lougheed before Lougheed got built. And then Lougheed came through and carved through a bunch of road allowances, some of which were no longer needed, and in fact one of which was never built, just up the road from here. This one, this lane serves that neighborhood, but the road was also built, and the road doesn't serve anybody, and in fact won't serve this lot the way the staff have configured or rather the proponent has configured it. So I'm left with the question: if we wouldn't build this road, why would we want it? Why do we want a road allowance that is a road that we'd have to maintain in perpetuity when it doesn't serve anybody? It just serves as a used car lot, I guess, occasionally, seasonally. We might want to try to formalize it with a bulb, but that involves tens of thousands of dollars in infrastructure that we'd have to put into a road that no one uses. I see a driveway just up closer to the stop sign, but I don't see it in street view. And so I'm left with the question as to why would this parcel be more workable? And I suspect it would be not only more workable, but it would be more marketable with taking into account perhaps a more flexible front property line. Traditionally, on this particular property, the cramming in of the parking onto the rear lane is actually an issue for me. I don't like it as much, and there's an extra walkway, and there's several other landscape elements that are designed to take into account that the parking is in the rear, even though two of the buildings are two of the houses are in the front. So I'm in favor of the zoning. I'm left with a preference that we consider undedicating the road, and on projects like this where the road doesn't serve anybody except the one property, and in this case doesn't even serve the one property, that we start to truncate these roads, particularly as they butt into Lougheed. Lougheed is a highway where tourists that go through our community get to see our community. They get to see lots of backyards. They also get to see lots of dead-end roads because that's how Lougheed was built, and I'd rather us find a way of making that border of our community, that back fence line, a little bit more attractive and more functional. Ultimately, we talked about it this afternoon. How do we find a way to densify our community? And we find that way by making sure we minimize the amount of roadway we have, minimize the amount of public paved spaces, and start to transition the rest of the property into the best land uses we can. And this particular used car lot isn't a great land use from my perspective. Councillor Hodge.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing when I look at this, and the more I look at this, the more I see opportunity here, because we just talked about the massing of the house, and you brought up the walkway that you have to get from the back, and then in the front yard we see this gravel no man's land that's just sitting out here. And I remember reading articles in the Vancouver Sun last fall about Vancouver looking at splitting streets and making streets narrow and adding an extra house on the corners. And I'm thinking, you know, you could almost put a house right in the end here. And if we're looking for places to put affordable housing, you know, we've got a piece of property that's serving no one, it's doing nothing. And, you know, the opportunities to somehow incorporate this piece of dead space out here in with that piece of property, whether it's through parking at the front or repositioning the house. And I just think there's an opportunity here for this developer to really do something special on a corner here. And so I'm going to support the zoning, but throwing out there that I think that there's some real opportunities here, whether it's for parking or repositioning a building or incorporating de-dedicating a road allowance. But somehow let's start looking for places like this around the city where we have roads that are doing nothing that could become housing. And today we had a long discussion about how do we make housing affordable, and it's the cost of the land, and we have this piece of land just sitting here not going to provide any benefit to anybody. So as I said, I'm going to support this, but I really want staff between now and the development permit to sort of see if there's some opportunities to make this project even better. And I agree with Councillor Robin. I'd like to see the massing changed around a bit, and maybe this comes into play with that. Thank you.
Mr. Rasmussen.
Well, thank you. I still think while the bylaw calls for 1.5, I have my issues about that in an area. And I think Council's view on these areas is just not what exists today, but what's going to exist in the future. And making sure we did the Northeast, and Councillor Hodge and I lived up there. We put in 8-meter roads. We did a lot of things that we thought, well, it's better for the developer, less cost, less parking. Well, we had to change that because we have a problem. We don't have enough parking. We have issues in the communities. So when we look at a development, we also have to look at its development today, but also what the development moving forward with their housing choices about the parking. I know they make the bylaw, they make the parking bylaw. And if they want to stick to that, they can stay to that. But I would say that I think it would be a benefit to look at adding parking in for the people that are going to live there and the community around it. And that's up to them to deal with. That would be my advice to them. I would prefer the parking not be in the laneway just because of the residents on the other side, the traffic moving out, especially if the city closes it off. I think there's going to be more movements on that lane up and down as we densify in that area. So that's the one concern I have. The development is good. The massing and the size is to get the square footage unit out of those units coming back. If you have smaller units, you're going to have a less viable product, I would say, for the land cost and development cost going in there. So those are the trade-offs that you have to make it viable. And I know the developer overall has made a good design and work at this project. But I do think if they can work it in and with staff going through this to look at ways of opportunities to include some more parking within that, I think it'll help them on the sale of their developments. I think people are always looking at what the parking is, and if you have more parking or a proper amount of parking, it will be, I think, an easier sale, a better attraction, and a better price that you will attain rather than limited parking. So I think that's a positive for you. But I'll move this forward, and I'll leave that between the proponent and staff to see what they can come up with if they can. Thank you.
Councillor Reamer.
Thank you. Well, I wasn't going to speak, but I will now. I am going to support this project, but with respect to the parking, obviously, some of my colleagues say put more parking in, and others say, well, no, don't. So I just hope that we do what is in keeping with the character of the property. And so if the extra parking takes away from that character, don't do it. If it doesn't take away from the character, then that's fine. Those are just my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No other comments. The motion is second, third, and fourth reading. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
That concludes the items on the formal agenda.
Councillor O'Neill.
Yes, just some information I'd like to share with council and public.
Well, unless it's about emerging talent, because I was going to do that one.
No, it's not about emerging talent. This is about the Coquitlam Foundation. And over the weekend, I was working on some publicity regarding the establishment of a new fund, and it is the Trevor Wingrove Bursary Fund. And Trevor Wingrove was a city manager, General Manager of Corporate Services. He died in 2010 at the age of just 42. He was also quite a lacrosse star during his long sports career in Coquitlam. And the Wingrove family, specifically his father Les Wingrove and his brother Craig Wingrove, have worked with the Coquitlam Foundation to establish a bursary fund in his memory. And I'd just like to let the public know about that, and it's a city business as well. This bursary is designed to assist student athletes, specifically those who played at least 2 years with the Coquitlam Minor Lacrosse Association, assist them in pursuing post-secondary education or training, and will be awarded annually to keep Trevor Wingrove's memory alive and to help young people in our community. So it's a really great thing, and we're very proud that the Coquitlam Foundation will be able to be part of that and keeping memory alive of a former city employee who was a very untimely young death. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor O'Neill. And for those of you who have family legacies or family funds or family causes that you wanted to establish some kind of a bursary or legacy program, the Coquitlam Foundation is a great mechanism to use to contemplate that sort of thing. If you do want to give that some thought, the Coquitlam Foundation is very worthy, and we all of council certainly supports that as well. I also wanted to mention that both Councillor O'Neill and myself, and I'm sure other councillors will go off to see it as well, we're at Evergreen Cultural Centre yesterday with the opening of Emerging Talent, which is an absolutely amazing art program that is done through School District 43 high schools and supports emerging artists both on the visual art side and on performance art side, including music. And they put on an absolutely amazing show. It's in the gallery for several weeks now, so make sure you drop by and see that. Is there a motion to do anything? Moved by Councillor Asmussen, seconded by Councillor Reamer to adjourn. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much for coming.